Hey guys, welcome to Drama Diving. Today we are going to be talking to the MV Valkyrie. Hazel is going to join us, and we're going to chat about a couple different things with that. Super excited for this one, not just because of the Scotch and whiskey potential of Scotland, but just the general idea of getting this knowledge out there, because this is a very, very different location that I don't think a lot of people really truly know where it is. So just a couple of words before we go ahead and get started. Remember, we're doing this just kind of to get through and help you guys out. We're going to continue doing this after the whole COVID thing is down and out. But if you could give us a drop on Patreon or purchase some of those whiskey glasses. We just got a bunch more in. The Drama Diving whiskey glasses, not that you can see that when it's up against me, but the Drama Diving whiskey glasses, that helps us out a ton. Well, helps us out some. So that is a great benefit to us, but we are going to go ahead and get started and check in and see how Hazel is doing in Scotland. So let me bring her on in. Hello, how are we doing?
Hello, Jason. Very well, thank you.
Good. We do have, there was a little bit of a slight delay, but I don't think it's going to be crazy or anything. So just so you know, there is a little bit of delay. So, but actually it looks like it cleared up some. So how are you guys doing out there, and where actually are you, so that all of our viewers can understand that?
Okay. Well, first of all, where are we? We are at the end of the line. We're at, if you imagine Great Britain and Scotland at the top of Great Britain, we're beyond Scotland, so we're right up in a group of islands. We like to say we're the first rock north of Scotland, so we're there up in about a 7-mile gap between the north of Scotland and us, and then you have the Orkney archipelago, which is a ring of islands off the north coast, and in that ring of islands, of course, is the anchorage of Scapa Flow.
Beautiful. So I think a lot of people don't understand exactly where that is, but we're going to get into that in a little bit. So how are you guys doing with the whole COVID thing and all the craziness that's going on in the world right now?
Yeah, well, interesting times, I think, is the best description that we all live in at the moment. It's, I think, just as crazy over here as it is with you guys in the States. It's just incredible. We've come to a dead stop with our business. Lockdown in the UK and especially in Scotland is still going on. We're still locked down in Scotland, so we're basically allowed to leave our houses for exercise, and that's it. Or to go shopping as well. So, but that's basically all we can do. So, as commercial seafarers, we are key workers, so we can still go to the boat and maintain the boat and make it better, but that's all we can do. We can't work with guests at all.
Can you guys, what's the projected time frame when you guys can actually start having guests? Do you know?
That's the $1 million question at the moment, is when we can actually start running again. We'd like to think that we can start running as soon as the government lets us. Certainly we're on the starting blocks. We're set up on the starting blocks at the moment. Good. So we can run anytime we're allowed to. But I would imagine that it will be a good 2 months yet. Okay. A good 2 months, yeah.
And you guys had a solid sellout for the 2020 season, didn't you guys, from the looks of it?
It was pretty busy. We were booked out on 2 boats. So we run both the MV Valkyrie, which you can see up behind me here, up there. Nice. That's the Valkyrie. And we also have a bigger boat called the Valhalla. And both of those boats were pretty well booked out for the season. And that followed on from an incredibly busy year in 2019, which, of course, was the 100-year anniversary, the centenary of the sinking of the German fleet in Scapa Flow. So that was incredibly busy as well. Yeah. Good.
So I guess I've been diving for about 15 years, been an instructor for 10. And even as I got into technical diving, I didn't really realize what Scapa was or even, Scapa, you hear Scapa Flow and you think, if you have zero reference, you're like, well, it kind of sounds like maybe Malta or Utila is that, where is that? What in the world? So newer divers a lot of times have absolutely zero clue of any of the history of what in the world is going on in Scapa. Yeah. but I think it's just absolutely amazing when people start realizing what it truly is. So can you give us kind of a general rundown? I did a good job, fairly good job of putting it on the Facebook page, but hearing it from you exactly what Scapa is. Go ahead.
Scapa Flow is an enclosed anchorage. It's one of the biggest natural harbors in the world. And the word Scapa Flow comes from Scapa Flow, which is Old Norwegian, Old Norse for a sheltered anchorage. And the idea was that Scapa Flow was used as a safe haven for shipping from prehistoric times right the way up to modern times. So if I pointed the camera out the window, you can see that we have a good few oil tankers and oil rigs actually sitting in Scapa Flow at the moment, safe in a very sheltered anchorage. So it doesn't matter what the weather is doing outside. For shipping, it's a very safe place to be. And that was brought home in the First World War. So in 1914, obviously, Europe went to war for whatever reason. And there is actually a very good description of the start and in fact the duration of this First World War as World War I as a bar fight. Just Google it, and it's actually funny, but not funny in the same sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that happened during World War I is that air power became a feature of warfare. At first, it was lighter than aircraft. So the blimps and the Zeppelins, and they were coming over and bombing Britain. Now, not many people know that, but the Zeppelins were actually coming from Germany right the way across the North Sea and were actually bombing Britain. And one of the fears at the time was the main naval anchorages, the harbours in the south of England where this bombing was taking place. It meant that the fleet was not secure in that anchorage. So they moved the entire fleet up to Scapa Flow and secured the anchorage at Scapa Flow. So the British home fleet was based in Scapa Flow right through the First World War. So this is the anchorage from which the Battle of Jutland started. So that they left from Scapa Flow to go to the Battle of Jutland. If we leave out the history of the First World War, right at the end of the First World War, the German fleet was really the bulk of the Germans' military power was left in her fleet, and it was a very close match between the Royal Navy and the Kaiserliche Marine, the German Imperial High Seas Fleet. And one of the fears at the end of the war, when the armistice was signed, was that the German fleet would be used to restart the war effectively. So one of the points in the armistice was that the fleet had to be interred. Basically, it meant that they became effectively bargaining chips in the armistice at the end of the war. And the place that they were interred was Scapa Flow.
Mm-hmm.
With me so far?
No, absolutely. I love it.
Good. Okay. So right at the end of the war, 1918 through to 1919, the German fleet was interred at Scapa Flow. And it was a skeleton crew aboard each ship. But there were 74 warships. This was a big, big fleet. And in fact, I'm sure you've seen pictures of the warships at anchor in Scapa Flow. And that was, you had both the British fleet and the German fleet here at the same time. It was a very, very busy fleet and a very busy anchorage. So part of the fear in the German fleet was right at the end of the armistice process. There was actually a stalemate right at the very end of the process. And it went right to the wire. It went to the very last day. And the last day was the 21st of June, midsummer. It was the cutoff point for the armistice to be signed. And the German fleet was, as I say, this bargaining chip in that process. Right on the 21st of June, they said, it's okay, we'll extend it another 4 days. So the actual signing of the armistice happened around about the 25th. 24th, I think, 24th or 25th. But the German fleet in Scapa Flow didn't know that. All they knew was, oh, perfect, lovely photograph of the fleet there. All they knew was that the actual armistice on the 21st had not been ratified. So they thought that the war was about to start again. And Admiral Von Wyck, who was the commander of the German fleet, made a judgment call. And whether it was right or whether it was wrong, nobody really knows. It's very difficult to get accurate information of what was in people's heads at that point. But remember, he thought his fleet was about to be taken over and used against his own country.
Yep. So
he made a very famous signal by flag to the whole of the fleet. And that signal said, paragraph 11. And then it had, underneath that, it said, confirm. So once that signal had gone all the way around the fleet and it had come back to the flagship as confirmed, they put up an execute signal, which was just a single flag of do it now, and they sank their own fleet.
Mm-hmm.
It's the biggest act of mass naval suicide ever witnessed in the world at any point. And 74 warships began to sink. The sight was incredible. There's no movie footage, unfortunately, but there are photographs of the fleet sinking. And some of these photographs were taken by the British, some were taken by the Germans. And the fleet sinking sent the world into shock. It was the British and the Allies considered it an act of war. They considered it an act of defiance. And in fact, a lot of the ships that sank actually raised their battle ensigns as they sank, as an act of defiance. And that left us on the seabed of Scapa Flow with a collection of, well, I think in the end about 60, between 55 and 60 warships actually sank. Some of them were saved, some of them were run aground, some of them just didn't sink. But 60 or so, 54 to, I think was the number that actually went to the bottom.
Wow.
And it's the biggest collection of wrecks anywhere in the world. And it stayed there right until about 1924, when a salvage operation started. And that salvage operation was by a company called Cox and Danks. And Cox and Danks salvaged a big proportion of the German fleet. But we're still left with some. We have 7 major capital warships of the Kaiserliche-Marine, the German Imperial Navy, lying in the bottom of Scapa Flow still. And it's a huge draw for divers. So there's your potted history.
I love it. From what I read, they had been preparing this for a significant period of time. And what they had going on is that they actually were welding a bunch of the doors shut to make sure that this actually went through fully. So this was shocking what they actually were capable of doing.
It's actually very interesting how they sank the ships. The ships were sank. Oh, British, lovely picture. That's actually a super dreadnought Bayern as she's sinking. The ships, battleships are designed not to sink. I mean, it's the main thing about them is they're designed to float and fight. And the German ships were incredibly well engineered. And I can say this with all honesty, they were better engineered than the Royal Navy ships, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And they were designed not to sink. I mean, that was the whole point of them. The German crews opened pipes between compartments. They welded doors open so that the doors couldn't be closed to save the ship. And then they actually took the inspection hatches, and these were huge. These were 1.5 meters. Sorry, 4.5.
That's fine.
by
we should be doing metric system anyways. Come on, just go with metric. It's fine.
Metric, imperial. It's okay. It's okay. If the German ships, it probably should be imperial.
Yeah, touche.
But they took the inspection hatches off the condensers. Now the condensers was where steam was cooled down and made back into water to go around the steam cycle for the turbines.
Mm-hmm.
And then they opened the valves to flood the condenser rooms. And that's a meter and as I say, about 2 tons of water per second per condenser. And they had up to 12 condensers. So
wow.
You're talking about 30 or 40 tons a second of
Mm-hmm.
water entering the hulls of these ships to sink them. I think the men who actually stayed down there to turn the valves to switch this on were probably both very scared and very brave.
Yeah.
And certainly there is accounts of them coming out wet up to their chests.
Wow.
From the engine rooms from having turned on the valves. And the other thing was they took the wheels off the valves and carried them up to deck with them and threw them off the side of the ships. So there was no way to save the ship.
Nope. Yeah, and I was reading that they were dropping keys off the side of it for weeks at a time, just like drop a key here, drop a key there. It's very interesting on how they went through the whole thing. So we've spent like 20 minutes on history and now people are starting to yap about diving on the chat. So Dave Stallings wants to know what the typical dive conditions are. Especially, I'm concerned about fall 2021 if there's a possibility there. So
okay. I'll have to consult my crystal ball on that one. Dive conditions. Well, a lot of people think that the German fleet is deep, dark, scary, and technical. That's not necessarily true. It can be as technical as you want it. The first thing to say is that there is no dives in Scapa Flow that we do on a regular basis that are deeper than 45 meters.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sorry, I have to convert that into feet, but about 110 feet, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not deep. Really,
nope.
they're within the range of recreational diving.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing to say is that the water temperature is usually in the summer, it's around about 12 to 13 degrees at the most. So you're looking at that's sea, of course.
Yeah.
You're looking at dry suit conditions, but not freezing cold dry suit conditions. So anyone that dives in the sea in a dry suit can easily dive here. It's not breaking the ice before you go in.
Yeah.
And visibility, well, that's the $100 question. What's it going to be like when you're here? In the fall, September, October, November, visibility tends to be pretty good. So you can reliably talk about 45 feet of visibility plus. So, pretty reasonable diving conditions.
Nice. So I guess the question that I kind of have is it's a liveaboard, essentially, what you guys have, correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay. So how long is the actual steam out to the wrecks from where you guys are at?
Okay. So the liveaboard works quite a strange way in Scapa Flow. Our big liveaboard boats are there primarily to give us a stable diving platform. We like the big boats because obviously, even though it's an archipelago of islands, we do still get wind. It's a feature here. And we want a stable diving platform, a nice, warm, welcoming diving platform as well. So you live on board, but we go back to port most nights, if not every night, depending on the weather.
Gotcha.
And the steam out to the wrecks is about 1 hour.
Okay.
So
it's not terrible. Yeah.
Basically you start getting ready and you're ready when you get to the wrecks.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. We generally do 2 dives a day. The reason for that is that it's a square profile wreck dive in what we like. We like to call it the thermal challenge. You get cold.
Yeah.
You can stay in the water for as long as you like. So if you want to do a 2.5 hour runtime, it's fine by us.
That is amazing. I love every second of that. So a lot of people, I mean, I've had some 10-minute run times or 10-minute steam times, which are absurdly short. And you're like, I don't even know what to do. So an hour seems just about perfect for running out there. I converted the 12C for everybody. It's about 55 degrees Fahrenheit, which is warmer than the water I just got out of. So, which is perfectly fine. I think we did it 80 minutes this morning. So, it's definitely doable. It's beautiful. So, what's the surface conditions like during that time frame? I mean, you guys are fairly north, so
Well, as I said, Jason, the islands ring Scapa Flow, so it's a big big pond, really. But having said that, the fetch, the nautical term, the fetch from land can be about 6.5 miles. So actually, you can be quite far away from land depending on the wind direction. So we do get what we call the Scapa chop, which is a short, sharp chop, and on a windy day, you can be talking about 1.5 meters of chop. Now, I don't want to put anybody off, but you have to put that into perspective. What we call a windy day.
Yeah.
So everyone's familiar with the Beaufort scale, I'm sure, of wind speeds, and
I would assume many people are, but not most.
Okay. Most divers are.
Yeah.
The Beaufort scale, we dive up to a force 8.
Okay.
So that gives you some idea. And at that point, yes, you get 1.5 meters, 2 meters of chop. But force 7, force 6, by the time you get down to force 5, it's a bathtub.
Yeah. I like it. We had a couple of questions. Let me grab them here. Comments. Can't wait to dive Scapa once I've completed DECO procedures course in July from Matt, which I think is a good plan in general. Like you said, it's not technical only. It's not technical only, but having it definitely opens it up completely.
It does. So. You definitely want to run some DECO, and especially if you're using nitrox, which gives you a bit more time on the line. A bit less time on the line, so a bit more time on the bottom. And it's ideal for ADP, advanced DECO procedures where you're working at, accelerated DECO or just a DECO on 30, higher nitrox level for safety. But we can supply nitrox right to whatever percentage you want. So if you want to dive 27%, we can dive that on the deeper wrecks. And then if you come up to the shallower wrecks, 32%, and it gives you the best time on the bottom compared to the time on the line. But DECO definitely, if you want to get the best out of Scapa for any of the dives, you want to be doing probably 10 to 15 minutes of DECO to get the best benefit.
Good. I guess that leads to bring in the question of what sort of facilities you guys have. And I mean, is there going to be questions for doubles and side mount and rebreather? And I had somebody just recently be like, Scapa, will they even allow side mount? Like, could they do that? Because you don't even you don't know what the boats are. There's a rough frame of reference there. So what sort of supplies, what do you guys do? What do you have available?
Okay. Well, for people traveling from the States or from anywhere abroad, we have a range of cylinders that we can supply. Now, cylinders are the only things that we supply. We don't supply dry suits or diving gear or anything else. So you have to bring all of that with you or rent it from one of the shops here. Okay. But we supply tanks. That's not a problem. And we can do doubles. We can do the usual one is the double 12s is the standard. We do have double 8.5s if you're looking for the backup of the double tanks, but not quite so much weight. We can also do 15s, so 15 liters. So what's that? 20 foot or something like that.
It's a big one.
So we do have that. We have stages, usually the 80 cubic foot or the slightly smaller 60s. That we do, and we can fill them with any DECO gases that you require. We can do trimix if you want to do trimix. That's not a problem. We have that on the boat, and we can supply, as I said, we can supply nitrox to any level or just air if you want to dive air. So all of that's no problem at all. We also supply or can supply to hire 3-liter cylinders or 2-liter cylinders for rebreathers, and we also have a supply of softener lime on board should you want to buy your softener lime at the point rather than bring it with you. So,
which is always the money deciding factor on that one.
It is,
a lot of locations it's very expensive, but sometimes you look at it and go, it's more what I can buy it for, but it's way less hassle.
It works out for us for 20 kilos of softener lime. It works out about £85.
Okay.
So it's basically what we pay for it. We don't make money on it. So.
Yeah, and that's a fairly reason. I mean, we've seen places where it's absurdly expensive.
Sure.
Same as helium. Helium through the roof of $6 a cubic foot. So, which is
okay. No, we charge. We at the moment the helium price is 6.5 pence per liter of helium used.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't do the calculations in my head, but I'm sure you can work it out. Yeah.
We can work it out later on. It's nothing that we need to figure out right now. So we'll stick with the diving questions and come back around for the other ones. So what's your favorite wreck to dive and why?
Wow. Okay. My favorite wreck to dive and why? My favorite wreck would probably be the Kleiner Kreutzer, the small cruiser, light cruiser, Kolm. Why? Well, it's in 36 meters of water, so it's very accessible. You can get a nice long run time on it. It has so much to see, just so much to see. I think I must have dived it, I don't know how many times, hundreds of times. And there's something new to see every time. It has an impression of a ship. Not just a wreck, but a ship, and a ship lying on the bottom on its side. And you just feel like you could go down there, stick a few patches on it, to put it on the surface, and it would sail away. So it's remarkably intact for something that has been on the seafloor for 100 years and also been salvaged. So it has a remarkable intact feel about it, even though you can swim inside the wreck 4 decks in. So there's just a feel about it. It's a thing. It's a zeitgeist. It's a feeling. It's just something, and you really get keen on. You get keen on the Kolm. That's for sure.
Nice. I think they're all good, amazing wrecks in general. So that's got to be a really hard question for you. I'm sure. I'm going to preemptively strike because I'm sure there's going to be questions on this and might as well stay on the topic. So penetration possibilities is going to be the question. So how are they penetratable? What's the situation there?
Okay, it's horses for courses. Some of the wrecks are, and some of the parts of the wrecks are very easy to penetrate and get inside and have a look inside. Others are more dangerous. There's no doubt about that. Certainly, with reference to the cruiser or the cruiser shaped ship, to be accurate, it's actually a fast mine layer. But the Brummer, the bow of the Brummer is actually inherently quite a dangerous area, so we don't encourage people to go in there. But then there are areas where it's absolutely safe, and yes, we encourage people to go in. One of the classic dives in Scapa is actually diving underneath the Dreadnought, the Kronprinz Wilhelm, and diving underneath 26,600 tons of steel is, well, it concentrates the mind.
I bet it does.
And in that dive, you can see her 12-inch main armament that was involved in the Battle of Jutland, and it's the only place you can see 12-inch guns that fired at Jutland without going to Jutland. So it's something. It really is. It's a dive that is, it's certainly way up there on the list of favorite dives, although the Kolm just maybe gets there. But I mean, it's one that we actively encourage people to go in underneath the wreck. So yes, if it's safe, we tell people to do it, or don't tell people to do it, but we suggest it as a dive. Of course, your dive is your business. You can go and dive along the bottom if you want. But we would actively encourage people to go and see these guns. In other places, we would say, look, let's play ball here and say, this area is dangerous. Don't go in this area. And if you stick to the dive briefing, it's safe.
Yeah, and they're wrecks. Sometimes we see scuttled wrecks and things like that are cleaned out, but these are the real deal wrecks that no disrespect to any of the scuttled wrecks, but this isn't the Wolf Islander where we're from, or the Spugle Grove, or the Duane, or the Oriskany. These are, and those are great wrecks, but these are not. These are real wrecks.
Well, they are scuttled, but they were scuttled as intact warships.
Yes.
So you know, there are places where you can still see the portholes on them. You can. It's not a dive that we encourage people to do, but for people who have been to Scapa Flow a lot and actually know where to look, you can still see the steering helms. You can still see the telegraphs. You can still see the electric steering motors on a ship 100 years old.
Wow.
So yeah, you know, there are still things in there that are really very, very particular to these wrecks, including the main armament and the secondary armament that you'll see on virtually every dive. If you don't see a gun, I'll be surprised.
Nice. And to clarify for people, there's no removal of artifacts within 100 meters, I believe, of any of the wrecks. Just to clarify that, all that.
That's absolutely the case.
Yep.
Aside from these wrecks being, you know, our livelihood here in Scapa Flow, which we're very protective of, it is actually illegal to even carry salvage equipment, not even to take anything from the wreck, but even just to carry a hammer. Is illegal within 100 meters of any of the German ships, and they carry the same level of protection as Stonehenge.
Yep.
So, you know, and St. Paul's Cathedral. So they are very much national monuments.
Yep. And they're considered war graves, or a couple of them are considered war graves. What's the situation there? I couldn't get clarification with reading.
Yeah, there are a couple of ships in Scapa Flow, particularly not the German ones, although there is one German. It's actually a U-boat in Scapa Flow that is a war grave, but it's actually the British ships in Scapa Flow that are war graves, and they are non-diveable. You can't dive them.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of history as to why that's the case, but basically the Ministry of Defence, which is the British equivalent to the Pentagon, said you can't dive these wrecks. One is the Royal Oak, which is worldwide famous, and the other one is one called the Vanguard, both of which more than 800 men died on. So
wow,
you know, very, very, very poignant war graves.
Gotcha. So we got a question slightly on the other side of things. Dave Stallings wants to know types of sea life. Was there types of sea life? Do we see that, or is it mostly the wrecks that we're taking a look at?
Hi, David. Thanks for your question. Types of sea life. These are wrecks that have been there for 100 years, so they are the ultimate artificial reefs. Being inside a ring of islands, it doesn't get the high tidal current you would expect to see a real profusion of marine life. But having said that, they are very, very prominent upstands in the seabed, on the seabed. So you do get a lot of life on them. Primarily green water life, you know, Northern Hemisphere green water life. Sometimes the amount of biomass on the wrecks in Scapa Flow actually outweighs the biomass of a coral reef.
Wow.
So, you know, there is a lot of life there. You maybe have to look for it a little more. It's not going to come up like a big grouper or a Napoleon wrasse or something like that. But there is life there, and it's profuse. Lots of it. Yeah.
Good. And just circle back. I know we said it previously, but we're basically talking about 55 degrees Fahrenheit. And what do we say the visibility was again?
Oh, something, well, in the fall, which is the best time of year in terms of the balance between weather, visibility, and water temperature, you're looking at 15 meters plus, so 45 feet plus, something like that. Yeah.
That's good. I just wanted to kind of circle back, and that's going to be a question we're going to get into if we didn't address it right away. So lots of different marine life, lots of different wrecks. They were scuttled. So that leads us to what's it like on your liveaboard with the diving, and the other question, let's stick with that. So let's say, what's it like to dive off of the Valkyrie or the Valhalla?
Okay, first of all, these are big boats. They're about 80 feet long, so they're big, stable vessels. The Valkyrie is a wooden vessel, and thank you very much. The Valkyrie is the one on the right there, and the Valhalla the one on the left. And they're both very comfortable liveaboards. They have 6 cabins each. 2 bunks to a cabin. The Valhalla has ensuite showers in each cabin. The Valkyrie has 2 showers, 2 heads, and marine toilets, for those of you that don't know.
I was going to say, some people, you might have to clarify that.
Yeah. And they are big, comfortable boats. The other thing is they're centrally heated, so it's you're not going to get cold. Hot showers, no limit to the number of showers you can have, no limit to the number of people you can have in the shower. If it's one of those trips.
I like it.
And they're comfortable to dive from. The dive deck is pretty large, and it's all fill where you sit. So you just, at the end of the dive, you just sit down, tie your set to the rail, take your first stages off, or if it's a rebreather, pop your bottles off. We fill where you sit, so there's no moving your kit around. It all goes back together again once you're ready, and you stand up and fall back into the water again. So really quite low stress diving. The other thing that we have is that we have diver lifts. Now, diver lifts, thank you. Diver lifts are a fantastic addition to the boats. They really help with getting divers out the water, obviously, but it also helps you with that exertion post-dive. So we try and make it as easy as possible. And basically, the boat comes to you. You don't have to swim for the boat. You come up from the dive, signal to the boat, you're okay, and the boat comes to you.
Nice. And that leads into, I believe I was reading on your guys' website, the DSMB situation. Make sure you got one, right?
Yeah, make sure you've got one and make sure you can use it from
That's
from
the key.
I said that there's not much tidal flow, but it's not a lake. There is tidal flow. It is the sea. So you can certainly be a couple of 100 meters away by the time you surface if you didn't have an SMB, and it's a shipping lane. So there's, as I said earlier, there's a lot of shipping in Scapa Flow because it's a sheltered anchorage, and you really want to have a marker.
Yeah,
you really
and
want
you're
to
not
have a marker. Yeah,
yeah, and you're not guaranteed to find the shot line, right? Either. So
no, the battleships in Scapa Flow, we have 3 Dreadnought type battleships, and they're 144 meters long. So if you're at one end and the shot line's at the other end, you need an SMB.
Yes, you do. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm going to throw up the entrance right there. So that's the step off down in.
Giant stride into the water. It's about 1 meter above the water, so not too far to drop. So 3 foot, and nice. It's a pretty comfortable giant stride entry. Yeah.
Nice. The accommodations for sleeping, you're sleeping on the boat because it's a liveaboard, like you said, but it might be you might be tied up to the dock. But so what are the bedrooms like?
Okay, well, they're pretty comfortable. First of all, they're full-size beds. They're not tiny bunks. As I said, the cabins are centrally heated. There's 2 bunks, one above the other, in each cabin, and pretty comfortable beds. We've never had any complaints anyway.
Nice. What is the difference between the Valkyrie and the Valhalla?
The Valhalla is a steel boat, so she's slightly heavier, so she doesn't move quite as much as the Valkyrie does. But I mean, they're both big boats, so not much in any case. And the Valhalla has ensuite showers, so each cabin has its own shower. The Valkyrie has communal showers, so each cabin goes to 1 shower, or actually 2 showers for showering. But apart from that, they're basically the same.
Nice. So question that, let me just double check the comments, but we haven't gotten it yet, but I'm assuming it's going to come at some point in time. Here is, we always get the question of non-divers, and we always get the question, especially when we say we are considering Scotland, family members going, ooh, I want to go there too. So how would that work? Would they just find a room on shore? Does that work at all? How does that whole thing play out?
It depends on the dynamic of the group. If we have certainly wives, girlfriends, boyfriends, and husbands coming on many of our trips, and some of them stay on board the boat and some of them stay ashore. It depends on what you want to do. The advantage of our setup is that the liveaboards come back to dock every night. So when you're in dock, obviously you can go and see the sights, you can go to town, there's all sorts of things to do. It's a wonderful place for peace and quiet, fantastic views, fantastic walks, and also prehistory. There's a saying that if you scratch Orkney, it bleeds archaeology.
Nice.
There's so much to see here.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we can do is that wives and girlfriends, boyfriends and husbands can get off the boat in the morning and rejoin us again in the afternoon once we come back into dock. So they can either sleep on shore or they can sleep on the boat. So whichever way the dynamic works. Yeah.
Yep. What is the time frame for getting back to dock? I guess is going to be the next question that people ask.
We're usually, it depends on the diving, depends how far away we've gone. But usually we're back between 3:45 and 4:45 in the afternoon. So
nice. That's good. I love the fact that there's a lot to do and a lot around. Hopefully you don't have anything like the Blarney Stone where they pee on it to get all the Americans. So I'm sure there's a couple of little Scottish tricks there.
Not like that. No. The Irish are yeah, they're fine.
They're a special little bunch.
What we have in Orkney is we have a few. Just to list off a few things that we have. We have a Neolithic. Orkney was the Neolithic heart of Europe, which seems really odd. We're the first rock off the north of Scotland. Why was it the Neolithic heart of Orkney, of Europe? But it seems like a culture started in Orkney in Neolithic times. We're talking about Neolithic is the Stone Age, or exactly the New Stone Age, and that culture started building stone circles as a monument, as something nobody knows, but they started building stone circles, and that radiated outwards from Orkney into Europe, right down into France, to the Mediterranean, and all of the Neolithic, the menhirs in France, the Neolithic stone circles in Ireland, in the southern England, Stonehenge, all radiated from Orkney. So Orkney was where it started, and that culture went out into the wider European context. And Orkney has one of the finest stone circles. In fact, it has several stone circles, but one of the finest is what's called the Ring of Brodgar. And there is a thing about dancing naked round the stones at the Ring of Brodgar. I think it was started as a joke, but it's become pretty common now. So we see a lot of pictures of naked people's bottoms at the Ring of Brodgar. But divers will be divers.
I think this comment was for something else, but I'm going to put it right now. So I think that's definitely a thing in David's case. He is going to dance naked around those circles. And so I am ecstatic about this possibility of going to Scotland. I think that a lot of people have that misconception of where this is and what it's all about. Yeah. The idea that, I mean, you basically have a liveaboard, but you also get to experience all the intricacies of the area where it is, which you don't normally get that whole thing. It's you get on a boat and you leave and you go somewhere and then the next thing you know, you're back in dock and you're on an airplane and back home. Right.
Our experience is very different to that. We try and let people, because we get back at that sort of later in the afternoon, people have a chance to go and see Orkney in the evenings. I really recommend hiring a car or a van while you're here. There's so much to see. It's absolutely stunning. In fact, a lot of divers actually take a break midweek to go to these attractions while they're open and see the attractions while they're open. And what we can do is we can either leave later in the day or we can do one dive and get back in the afternoon and let people to get away. And we can catch that dive up later in the week.
That's amazing.
So we can do that. The other thing about Orkney, and it would be rude for me to be on a dram of diving without mentioning it, is we have
please.
very, very good whiskey distilleries in Orkney.
That was the next question. Well, it was the second to next question, but yes. Yeah. All right. Whiskey distilleries right there. That is unbelievable. So the next question was restaurant and pubs. Like, what's the food situation? How are we doing food? I saw some amazing pictures of the food you guys have on the Facebook page, but you got to go to a pub and you got to go to a distillery. So explain that whole situation we got going on.
Okay. We do food on board the boats. Our food is internationally recognized. It's renowned. We have full-time chefs on board the boats, so their job is to feed you until you cry. We don't skimp on food. It's something that we pride ourselves that everyone goes away full, and also maybe having put on just a little bit of weight. So that's
I like it.
that's our goal. Scottish food British food gets a very bad reputation, and I don't know where it comes from. People think that everything in Scotland is deep fried, and everything in England is and chips. That's just not the case with us. Orkney, in particular, Orkney is a farming community, so it has a very strong agriculture base, and part of that agriculture is, or in fact, the vast majority of that agriculture is actually beef production. Orkney has, in fact, the most intense beef production in Europe, although it's not feedlots. It is actually out in the field, and most of it is Aberdeen Angus, which is just the best beef that there is. So we try and serve locally produced products. We try and keep our food miles to a minimum, so that the food is actually really from the field to the plate with as few miles in between. And we actually produce our own food as well. We have a farm here that I'm sitting on at the moment, and we have lamb and also venison produced from that farm. So we use that on the boats as well.
Yeah. So that's impressive. That's not a normal live aboard menu right there, from what I can see. That's on your boat?
Yeah, that's on our boat, yes. That's one of the starters. That's a chorizo and red onion, and it looks like it's a mushroom quiche that's produced right there on the boat as you're diving. So it's made fresh. We don't use frozen.
So essentially, you're telling me that it's a live aboard that we can go in and drink whiskey and go to pubs and hang out in town at night. Then we can stay on the boat, and then there's also basically an excellent restaurant on board producing food like this.
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly what I'm telling you, Jason.
That is pretty much explains why you guys are sold out all the time. So what is the procedure for booking and for getting on the boat and all that fun stuff? Because it looks like it's a pretty far run before you can get on the boat.
It is, but we have very good transport links. One of the things that people often comment on is actually for one thing, the beauty of the journey to Scapa Flow. It's part of the process. It's part of the experience, but also it's not particularly difficult. So from you can fly in internationally into airport in Scotland, and at that point you can either hire a car and drive north. If you come into Glasgow or Edinburgh or Aberdeen, you can drive north from there, and you come up the road called the A9, and it comes up through the heart of Scotland, through the Cairngorm Mountains, through the wilds of Sutherland and Caithness, right up to the north of Scotland, and then you get a ferry across to Orkney. In some ways, that's the iconic way to arrive in Orkney, and it gives you an idea of that arrival by sea, which all those seafarers did, going back thousands of years. The other way, slightly more modern, is that you can fly in. You can bounce flight from one of those airports in Scotland, and you can fly into Kirkwall, which is about a 25-minute drive from the boat. So it's not too onerous. All we would say is make sure that your essentials are in your hand luggage, because sometimes the plane coming up is actually a very small plane. So sometimes that luggage gets delayed by a few hours. So make sure your essentials are in your hand luggage. But apart from that, it's pretty good. Certainly, I prefer the flight and then the drive up through Scotland, because it becomes part of the experience. And seeing a wider picture of Scotland is, I think, it's worthwhile. It's worth the drive.
Absolutely. What was the drive time from the airport up through Scotland? Did you say that?
Depends on which airport.
Okay.
But I would say from Edinburgh about 5.5 hours.
Okay. So leave, maybe get in a couple of days early and take a couple of days to
absolutely.
make a stop and visit some other possible distilleries on the way. I know, shocking, right? It's amazing. I love it. So where are you guys booking at right now? How far out is the booking time frame? If somebody wanted to book,
we're certainly booked up for 2020. The obviously with the COVID situation, we're knocking bookings on, so that's affecting 2021. Yep. We have some availability in 2021 at the start of the year. We're not sure what our availability will be at the end of the year as yet. Okay. But I would imagine there will be some availability in the fall of 2021.
Yeah. And hopefully there is, because it would just be terrible situation for a Dram of Diving not to show up in Scotland at the end of 2021. Just saying.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And we're also booking for 2022. So if you're looking further ahead, we're booking as far ahead as fall 2022.
Yeah, I mean, even if we needed to do that, I'm fine with waiting an extra year just to get a good week or whatever. So, sure. Yeah, that's and we're supposed to go to. I'm trying to get back to truck, and we were supposed to be in truck April 1st through the 15th of 2020, and that definitely did not happen at all. So we're looking at April of 2021 to do that. So maybe waiting to 2022 is a good idea. I'm not sure, but I mean, I want to come next week. So I mean, I got an empty spot on the shelf like right there that I need to fill. So that
I recommend. I think. That space, just judging by it, I think that would just be a bottle of Highland Park.
Yeah, that sounds excellent. Beautiful. So we are just about time up. I truly appreciate your time and spending time with us. I'll post up as many links as I can. I did some already. The only thing I was getting is a Google Chrome didn't like your website for a minute, but I don't know what that deal is. But you just got to click. I'm fine with going. So I really, really appreciate it. Any things you need to tell us before you head off and finish your evening?
Just thank you very much, Jason, for inviting me on. It's a real pleasure and a privilege. And to anyone who's watching, if you think Scapa isn't for you, you're lying to yourself. It is.
Yes.
It's the best. It literally, we like to say it is the top of UK diving, and that's every pun intended. It is the best green water, temperate water diving that there is in the world.
Yes.
And that's no lie.
Yeah. And I really like, that was my big thing, is when I, even 3/4 of the way through my career, I had no clue what Scapa was. And as soon as I found out, I was like, oh no, that is amazing. Like, I just thought it was another, Utila, Roatan, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's just another one of those little islands someplace. I'll look into it whenever.
Sure.
And then when I realized what it actually was, I was like, oh, I have been a fool for a very long time. No one explained this to me.
I can sum it up in a few words, which is 3 battleships.
I like it.
26,600 tons each.
Wow.
4 cruisers at 5,500 tons each. A destroyer, a submarine, a torpedo boat, and that's just the start. Wow.
That is impressive. We will be there at some point in time. As soon as you guys have space and time for us, we will be there. So, and one question. This we never talked about. How many people can fit on the boat? I don't think we ever said that.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah. Yes. 12.
12. Yep.
12. Yeah.
So 12 divers, 12 total people, 12
total.
12 total people. Beautiful. All right. So, and pricing gets done through you guys, yada, yada, yada. I don't know if it's, I wouldn't mention pricing at this point in time because it can change at any point, blah, blah, blah. But I highly, highly suggest, if you have not been, which I have not, but from what I have seen, heard, and been recommended from multiple people, is to get there. Absolutely. And I am planning it as soon as possible once the fall opens up for us. And I will throw that on the gauntlet right now that Mark Powell better show up on my boat, because he's, yes.
We know Mark very well, and we'd be delighted to have him back as well.
Yes. Oh, that might be the first time he's ever heard that. So thank you very much for saying that for Mark. So, all right, beautiful. Well, Hazel, I thank you so much, and enjoy your evening. I'm going to cut you out here, and then I'm just going to finish up here. So, thank you. Have a wonderful night. All right, guys, thank you very much for joining us. That is the end of the Scapa Flow with Hazel. I highly, highly suggest the MV Valkyrie and Valhalla for coming and seeing the Scapa Flow Rex. Thank you for all the support. We couldn't do this without the support that you guys have given us. We're close to 7,000 people on our Facebook page, and our YouTube is starting to rock and roll. So if you are on YouTube, go ahead and give us a subscribe. It's probably going to be on that side. So give us a subscribe when you get a chance. If you're on YouTube, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and get notifications. We go live, and it's all held right on there. So we also have the Patreon, which I can throw the link up, and the Patreon just helps us offset some of the costs with doing some things and some of the extra stuff that we're trying to do. And like we said previously, the whiskey glasses, the drama diving whiskey glasses, have a nice little diver actually in trim and properly in trim. We don't know if he's buoyant or not, because who knows. If you fill it up with enough whiskey, that he is actually diving in it, which is a lot of whiskey, but yeah, I'm sure you guys can get through it. I've got faith in you. So thank you again for joining in with Drama Diving. My name's Jason Meany, and have a wonderful night for all of you guys. Take care. Thanks again.